6 weeks later, we went to Copenhagen. And Copenhagen, again, it was great. We had this fantastic momentum from all the actions that had happened around the world. And all over Copenhagen, that number was everywhere. People were graffitiing it on walls, and there were posters and signs and things. And in the middle of the 2-week conference there at the UN ran, the most moving thing by far that happened was this church service at the great cathedral in the center of town, a Lutheran cathedral. Right? And it was an amazing service. It began with the choir processing in, and the first 8 or 10 choristers were carrying big branches of dead coral reef. Reefs are dying the world over as water temperature rises and the ocean becomes more acid. The next 8 or 10 choristers who processed in were carrying these beautiful big rocks that had been uncovered beneath the, as the glacier in Greenland melted, the rocks that had been exposed. And the last 8 of them carried, and this is where I just broke down in tears and began sobbing, carried these big wicker baskets of shriveled ears of corn from drought-stricken parts of Africa. And the tears were because the recognition in this new book of mine, that in some ways I waited too late to get started. We're not going to head off the worst. We're not going to head off global warming entirely. We have the chance of heading off the worst of it, but only if we work powerfully. And when that service was over, after Archbishop Tutu and the Archbishop of Canterbury had preached an amazing service, after that, they rang the great bell of the cathedral 350 times, and then 3,000 churches across Europe did the same thing. And it was beautiful and powerful. And before those 2 weeks were over, 117 nations had signed on to this 350 target, which was great. The only trouble was they were the wrong 117 nations, okay? They were the poor nations and the most vulnerable ones, and not the most addicted ones like ours that remain in a state of denial deep enough that we cannot come to any real terms yet with what needs to be done. And I was feeling so depressed at that final Friday of that conference, feeling sort of gut-punched because we'd worked so hard, and really this had been a moment when human beings might have risen to the occasion. It was sort of teed up in a way for that to happen, the eyes of the world that didn't happen. I was telling people earlier today that I was very glad that we brought with us 350 young people from all, we're complete numerical freaks about, this. We brought 350 young people from all over the world. Most of them had never been in an airplane. Most of them had never seen snow. Most of them were very cold all the time. In fact, North Face had donated all these parkas for us, and most of these kids were wearing 2 at a time, just to try to stay warm. But they were great, and they did great organizing at home to make these events happen, and they were doing amazing organizing there. And they were coming up to me that last day, and they could tell that I was depressed, and they kept saying in one way or another, well, what did you expect? We are up against the most powerful industry that the world has ever seen, the most profitable enterprise, fossil fuel that mankind has ever figured out how to do. Well, we've only been organizing for a year. You didn't think they were just going to roll over and we're going to go home and we're going to do this more, and we're going to make it bigger and stronger, and maybe eventually we'll get done what needs doing. And by the time we were ready to go home, I was fully bucked up and back on my feet. And that's what we're doing. We need your help on the 10th of October this year. 10-10-10. There is no excuse for forgetting what this day will be. We're having, instead of a global political rally this time, more like a global work party. And in thousands and thousands of places all over the planet, people will be putting in solar panels, digging community gardens, laying out bike paths, on and on and on. Not because we are under the slightest illusion that we will solve global warming one bike path at a time. We will not. We're not going to solve it one light bulb at a time. There is nothing as individuals that we can do that significantly addresses climate change. It will only be addressed, if it's addressed at all, when we pass the legislation at a global and a national level that puts a stiff price on carbon. But the message that we want very much to send with these work parties, beyond the fact that they'll do good things in thousands of communities that need doing, the message that we wish to send is a pointed political message. And that message is, we're getting to work. What about you, our leaders? What are you up to? If we can climb up on the roof of the church and hammer in a solar panel, perhaps you could be bothered to rise to the floor of the Senate and hammer out some legislation. Perhaps you could do your jobs, you know? Because for 20 years, nothing has happened. And now we don't need just a little bit to happen. We don't need kind of beginning baby step legislation. We're in a big hole. And we need serious action, seriously fast. And so that's what we'll be pushing for.